Good Yontiv, Shana Tovah. To me, Yom Kippur is an interestingly self-contradictory holiday. Traditionally, this day is a rehearsal for death. We don't eat, we don't drink, we don't wear leather, we don't take pleasure in cleaning ourselves up, and we wear a kittel, a white robe that ultimately is used as a burial shroud. Yet our rehearsal for death is all in the service of asking God for forgiveness that we might live for another year. We act as if dead in order to live, a contradiction. But as Samuel Johnson famously said, when a man knows he is about to be hanged in a fortnight, it concentrates his mind wonderfully. We rehearse our own deaths so we can concentrate on life. This year, I have felt my mortality more acutely as we have struggled to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic has concentrated my mind, as it were, leading me to contemplate on how I am using my increasingly limited time. There are many people who treat life as if the goal were to accumulate as many things as possible, the more expensive, the better. They equate wealth with respect or honor and seek to erect monuments to their own egos. Yet every time I see people with this attitude, I am reminded of Percy Bysshe Shelley's poem, Ozymandias. I met a traveler from an antique land who said, "Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read, which yet survive stamped on these lifeless things. The hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. And on the pedestal these words appear, my name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing besides remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. If the monuments even exist thousands of years later, who would really care about the person who had them built? You may subscribe to the thought, too base to be called a philosophy, that he who dies with the most toys wins. Yet I agree with its rejoinder, that he who dies with the most toys is still dead. I think that Andrew Carnegie, one of the wealthiest men to ever have walked the planet, would have agreed. Carnegie is famous for an essay about wealth, in which he wrote, "The man who dies thus rich dies disgraced." By the end of his life, he had given away over 95% of his wealth, somewhere between $65 billion and $80 billion in today's dollars. It has me thinking about the legacy I'll leave behind when my time walking this earth is over. I won't be known, if I'm remembered at all, for the wealth I accumulated and then gave away. This day, when we rehearse for our own deaths, when we are confronted with our own mortality and it concentrates our minds, what should be the legacy that we aspire to leave behind? How should we be living our lives now so that we can build the legacy we leave behind? You may not have known this, but in this life, there is a final exam. At least there is, according to Rava in the Talmud, Shabbat 31a. Rava said, after departing from this world, when a person is brought to judgment for the life they lived in this world, the heavenly court asks several questions. The very first question that they ask is, did you conduct business faithfully? Bet you didn't see that one coming, did you? But Judaism has always been about how we live our lives in this world, with the understanding that if we live our lives well today, the world to come will take care of itself. So if you want to leave a legacy, first you have to conduct your business in this world honestly, truthfully, faithfully. Andrew Carnegie is well known for building a fortune as an industrialist and giving most of it away to fund libraries, Carnegie Hall in Manhattan, universities, scholarship funds, charitable foundations, and much more. Yet despite his legacy as a philanthropist, he's also well known for having flooded out Johnstown, Pennsylvania, and violently breaking the Homestead Strike, during which 10 people were killed. Despite all his philanthropy, he will also be remembered with an asterisk by his name. Think carefully before your final exam about how you can answer the question, did you conduct business faithfully? The second question on your final exam is, did you designate times for Torah study? Now, this question is actually related to Mishnah Pirkei Avot 2:4, in which we are exhorted, say not, when I shall have leisure, I shall study. Perhaps you will not have leisure. Believe me, as a rabbi, I know. Torah study is not everyone's jam. And when you have leisure, Torah study will not be at the top of your leisure time activities. I get it. But do you get it? This isn't actually about Torah study. Let me put it into today's idiom. Did you put the big rocks in first? Every day is a container which can hold 24 hours and no more. You can fill that container with sand, things like scrolling through Facebook or checking your Twitter feed, trivia that don't contribute to a truly meaningful life. But if you put the sand in first, there won't be room for the big rocks, like spending time with your family, improving yourself, or making your corner of the world a better place. You cannot leave a legacy if you use up your life entirely on the trivial. But don't worry. Even if you put the big rocks in first, there will always be small little places where the sand will fit in. What this question is really asking, did you choose to prioritize what is really important, what leaves behind your legacy, before adding in the pleasant, trivial distractions that can liven up a day? Or did you fill your days with trivialities, accomplishing nothing of substance? The third question on our final exam is also not as it seems on the surface. Did you engage in procreation? No, it is not asking if you had children, or not that only. Rather, it is asking, have you created with the future in mind? The most famous example of this point is from the Talmud, Ta'anit 23a, in a story about Honi the circle maker. One day, Honi was walking along the road when he saw a certain man planting a carob tree. Honi said to him, "This tree, after how many years will it bear fruit?" The man said to him, "It will not produce fruit until 70 years have passed." Honi said to him, "Is it obvious to you that you will live 70 years, that you expect to benefit from this tree?" He said to him, "I found a world filled with carob trees. Just as my ancestors planted for me, I too am planting for my descendants." When we create, we are asked, is it only for our own benefit or for the benefit of future generations to come? Louis XV of France is known to have answered, "Après moi le déluge." After I'm dead, I don't care if there's a second flood. But we Jews are called to a different standard, for we are called upon to think of more than ourselves. We are even called upon to think of more than our own children or grandchildren, but of all the generations of humanity to come who will find this world better or worse for our actions during our lives. We will be called to account Have you contributed to a better future for the world? Tonight is the beginning of Yom Kippur, a day on which we rehearse for our own deaths. It is a day which concentrates our minds on how we live our lives and the legacy we will leave behind. A day on which we ask ourselves, have I acted honestly and with integrity? Do I prioritize what's important instead of filling my days with the trivial? Have I contributed to a better future or been completely selfish? It is a day on which I must wonder, if we already know the questions that will be asked on our final exam, why do so many of us still fail?